Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching the Technique of the Month from Digital Photo Magazine. Now this month I'm going to go all moody and monochromatic as I show you how to make an amazing moody monochrome image. We're going to add a bit of grain and texture to it as well to really make it look quite different. So here we are, this is the colour image we're going to start with, and we're using Paintshop Pro X3 to do the work here. The first thing I want to do is to remove the colour and go all monochrome. Now there are a dozen ways of doing that in Paintshop Pro. I'm going to show you my favourite way, and that's to come up to Effects, choose Photo Effects and Infrared Film. Now infrared film is going to give you a nice kind of monochromatic effect. Let's just apply the preview so you can see it. But I don't really like that effect. I'm going to try and soften it by using the preset of weak. Now weak makes it sound like it's not going to be very good, but I actually think that looks better because it's not quite so overpowering. It still gives a nice boosting contrast, and I really like the look of that mono. Right, so that's it. We now have a black and white image. Almost finished, you might think. Well, no, we're going to apply a few more steps just to try and make this look a little bit different from all the other monochrome images out there. The next thing we're going to do is to put a grainy effect on the image itself. And to do that, we're going to need layers. So let's open up the layers palette, F8 on the keyboard, and let's make a new empty layer. So I'm going to make a new empty raster layer, and it's going to be on this layer that we're going to put the grain. Now we're not going to put it directly onto the main image because we're going to need to control how this grain works. But we are going to need to put something in this layer because we can't have just a completely blank layer. We've got to fill this with black. Now let's see what our foreground colour is currently. I'm going to press F6 on the keyboard. That'll open the materials palette, and we can see our foreground colour, well, it's green, and I need black. So I'm just going to reset my colour to black. Okay, let's get the flood fill tool from the toolbar and click anywhere on the image, and we'll fill our image with black. Now that's fine, but we now need that kind of grainy effect to go on to the black, and we'll find that by going to Adjust, Add Remove Noise, and then Add Noise. Now noise is normally spots and dots, but if you use it right, you can use it to make a sort of film grain effect. There's a few things you can change. You can change the style of your noise or your grain, random, uniform or Gaussian. Well, to be honest, there's not really much difference between random and Gaussian. I tend not to use uniform, so let's leave it on random. Very important that you have a tick in monochrome. If you don't, you're going to end up with coloured noise. Coloured grain, that's not going to be good. The amount of noise, well, the more noise you put in, the more obvious it's going to be on your picture. But for this effect, I want it to look a little bit less harsh, a little more filmy than that. So let's bring it down to about 20 and click OK. Now, from where you're sitting watching this video, you're probably thinking, well, it still looks black. And it'd be kind of right, actually. Let's zoom in and just convince myself that it isn't completely black. No, look, I can just start to see those spots and dots appearing. So they are very small white spots on a very large black image. Let's see if we can combine both the image with the grain and the image of the beginning, the starting layer underneath together. Now to do that, we're going to change the blend modes. Currently the grain blend mode is set to normal, but I'm going to change it to something a little bit different. In fact, I'm actually going to use difference. Difference is a great blend mode to choose when you're doing this grainy effect, because what it does is to make your grain black instead of white, and that makes it look, well, just a little bit different. It is, however, a little bit too small to see. We saw it before, it is tiny, so we're going to enlarge this grain. We're going to make it bigger, more obvious. And to do that, I'm going to change tools once again. Now I'm going to use the pick tool, and from the pick tool, I can start to scale this grainy layer. Now I could do it manually by dragging the corner handles, but I'm going to come up to the options bar here and I'm going to type in 200% for the width and 200% for the height. So that's going to make the whole thing bigger all the way over. There we go. And now with a bit of luck, you should be able to see that we have far more obvious looking grain on the picture. Yeah, that's kind of much clearer. You can really see that. The only trouble with it is now, it is kind of obvious that you've got black spots all over your picture, which Although I like the effect, I think it's just a little bit too digital. So let's see if we can just soften these little noisy spots away just ever so slightly. So let's go back to adjust. This time we'll choose blur and then Gaussian blur. Now we're going to Gaussian blur the noisy layer. But if you put too much Gaussian blur on, well, you can see what happened. They've all vanished. So we really want to put this down to something pretty small. Anything between 1 to 2 is pretty good. That's 3. Let's just type it in 1.5. We'll just wait for this to render the preview. That's fine. 1.5. There we go. And that'll give us a much more softer, grainy effect, just like that. Okay, so we're more or less finished now. That's kind of the whole effect done. There it is. There's our black and white, there's our moody monochrome and our grainy image. And you could stop there. But just as a little final touch, I'm going to add a wee bit of a border around the outside. Well, actually, it's going to be a huge border. Let's go mad. So I'm going to add in a thin white border, followed by a great big black border. Now, in Paintshop Pro, we add a border by going to the word image and add borders. Couldn't be clearer, really. A few things you need to set up in here. The units, well, I'm going to work in pixels, and then the color. Well, the current color, yeah, that's the right words. The current color is currently white, which is ideal because that's what I want, but the size is way too big. Now, I've got symmetric ticked, so I only have to change one box to change all 4 sides. And I'm going to add 10 pixels to the top, the bottom, the left, and the right. And we'll click OK. So there we are. We have a very thin white border around the edge. Now I want to add in a very thick black border. So once again, image, add borders. This time we want to change the color. So let's click on the white and change it to black by dragging that center square to black and clicking OK. And we're going to change the size. Let's put in much bigger border, 400 pixels. So that's 400 at the top, 400 at the bottom, left and right. And we'll click OK. And there we have it. There we go. So there we are. There's our nice classy border around our very nice, grainy, moody monochrome image.